about the English module selections. We would like to point out, to start off actually, that Amy Price was the sort of lead in this project really, who's a fourth year English student who can't be here today, so we've sort of stood in to help and explain, because we were both involved, so but she is the figurehead, I suppose.
She is indeed.
So yeah, we'll start off by giving you just a brief overview of the project. So there's an overview lecture for first years on the 2nd of March 2012, and a lecture for second years on the 24th of February 2012, which included both students and staff speaking about either their personal experience in the module, from the student point of view, or from the staff point of view, what the module might involve, generally what to expect, and particularly sort of maybe highlighting their research interests and I think they quite enjoyed being able to give their personal view of why they were leading these modules and what it involved. So that's the sort of other bit. And then after that, on the 2nd of March, there was also a module fair for second years, which again included staff and student speakers. So it was held down in the Margaret Room. So it was the Margaret Room, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
No, it was on the 3rd floor of Queen's.
Third floor of
if
Queen's.
Anyone knew that existed. It was on the 3rd floor.
On the 3rd floor of Queen's. And it had sort of stalls set up where the lecturers had their own little posts, didn't they? And students could sort of wander around, and they had sort of a list of all the modules and talk to the academics involved. And some academics bought copies of books that might be involved in the module, and sort of examples and whatever they wanted to bring really was sort of up to them. And yeah, it was such an opportunity for students to walk around and talk to people and find out a bit more about what the modules might be, because there are, within English for third year, for example, about 30 different modules, so it's obviously quite a lot to pick from. And yeah, so that's a sort of overview.
So okay, where did this project come from? So first of all, this came from Amy, so this was a concern that she felt that she had and that a lot of her students within English had, and Imogen's already pointed out that English is a large discipline, one of the largest in our college, and as a result it has a large amount of modules. So how do students go about choosing those modules? And Amy and indeed many other students thought that there was generally a lack of information about these modules that's published before the students choose them. So for example, this is just a snapshot of the module descriptors that are currently out there. So as you can see, there's the description, there's a 150 word limit, module aims, another short paragraph, intended learning outcomes. Now all the base information is there, but Amy thought, quite rightly, that really if you're to make a decision where you're only choosing such a small amount of modules, particularly in your third year, that you're essentially paying a lot of money for, then you want to make the correct decision. So how can we go about finding out more information about these modules? And one of the reasons that Amy wants to follow this through, and indeed the Director of Education, Joe Gill, is this idea that students quite often swap between modules at the beginning of a term because they've chosen a module that actually they shouldn't really have chosen. So, this is positive. It would decrease swapping, decrease administration. So there are benefits all across the board here. And also it formalises a current informal process that is already going on in the students. They look at those module descriptors, but you wonder, the potency probably lies when they actually talk to older students and asking what's good about this module. And that's something that's already going on, but we've not formalised it as a discipline or indeed as a college, and we're not really bringing it to the forefront of that one-to-one talking and discussion over modules.
Okay, so who was involved? So as you can see, there was students, education enhancement, college professional services and admin, and the academics. So from a student point of view, there was obviously Amy, who we did want to get a picture of, but we thought we wouldn't embarrass her. And there was myself and the SSLC, who Amy could go through us to maybe just, even if it was to find student representatives to talk at these module fairs or at the module lectures, generally being sort of the more volunteering sorts of type students. They were quite often the ones that did want to get involved. and also through things like having my yearly rights. I was able to send out messages on her behalf, post things on the forum and on the and advertise through yearly and other sort of social medias, and through sort of my recognition among the students to help advertise the project. Alex was obviously involved quite intensely and was helped quite a lot with just sort of setting up who sort of contacts and all that sort of stuff. And then Jo Gill, our Director of Education, who was she was all for the project, and she was very helpful throughout, always very facilitating. I don't think we could sing her praises enough really in this session. She was brilliant.
Yeah, one of the key elements of this project was it was having an academic, and it was having that academic buy-in, and that essentially gave it weight, because a large part of this project revolved around staff essentially doing something that was voluntary, which was that module fair. You know, they didn't have to be there. It wasn't in their job description, something they've not done previously, sit in a room for 2 hours behind a desk. So for Jo to put that message across and to put that project to her team was really important and vital in order for it to work successfully. So kind of what was the project over the year? This is probably quite a typical Change Agents project, and it was quite a year-long project. And it started off with the issue first, the module fair, and this idea of overview lectures. That was never what Amy came with at the beginning. At the beginning was just a problem, and we actually discussed very many different ways of approaching it. One of the first solutions we proposed was to have short video clips of each lecture for a module. But we were thinking, you know, the ramifications, how would we do this for 30 modules? Where would we house those video clips? How would we be able to do it fairly, and would it give across the information needed? So there was a lot of meetings between us, Jo Gill and Amy, and the outcome that became the best solution was this mixture of having 2 overview lectures for first years and second years, so that members of staff could give a quick shot on what their module was, and then the opportunity for students who've done those modules to also kind of sell the module essentially. And then to back that up for the modules and for the year group that is perhaps more important on which modules they chose, we did a module fair for the students who were in their second year going into their final year. And that really gave them the time to talk one-to-one with module conveners and with past students who've done that module, and to ask specific questions depending on what they wanted to find out. So we agreed that these would be essentially the 2 components of the project. Sorted out the administration, rooms were booked, students were recruited, students were invited, staff were invited, it was put on, and then crucially we did a wash-up as well. You know, things that have gone well with the project, things we can improve for next year, and that's what we can move on to now.
Okay, so the issues. It was difficult to recruit the students to come and talk with the lecturers, and there were a few issues with students not turning up or sort of plans falling through at the last moment about who was actually going to do it from a student point of view. So how to sort of tie students into committing to this project was quite difficult at different levels. 2, the second thing which we were worried about is, will there be modules that will suffer if they weren't represented? So those ones that didn't have particularly if they didn't have a student representative, does that make it appear that the students enjoyed the module less because they were less willing to talk about it, because they were less willing to sell it? Is that going to impact on how many people sign up for the module? I mean, we won't know that until a little further down the field. We don't think it will be a huge issue particularly, but maybe as the project expands, perhaps, well, hopefully as it expands anyway, there'll be sort of a natural link between the project expanding and students being willing to come and talk. But if the project were to expand and students were to become more reliant on it, would that be more of an issue? Okay, so problem number 3, increased engagement and publicity via SSLC and English Society. So this is something we've looked to do more in the future, is just publicising it more and making sure that people know it's going to happen. I know at the time there was questions on the English Society page saying, what time is it, how come they're having it at the same time as the core module? It wasn't at the same time as the core module, but it just needed a bit more clarification. And how to publicise it? Do we do it via Facebook? Do we do it via ELE? Do we do it via emails? How much of it comes from the department? How much of it comes from us? So yeah, just making sure that the word is out there more.
And I think you also did an ELE poll, didn't you?
Oh yeah, we did an ELE poll, which just got a very, very low response. I think actually, when I say low response, I mean 0 response. Which I think is partially, though, to be fair, to do with the fact that people aren't used to ELE polls yet. It's a relatively new thing, which I don't think students sort of know exists much. And I don't think it's exclusively to do with the module affair itself, more to do with people not engaging with ELE and the SSLC page on ELE. But I think that just does show that perhaps more students need to be more aware of things that are going on within the department, whether it's SSLC or specific events like this. But yeah, that was a very low response.
Yeah. So going forward, what do we need to take from this project and keep, and what do we need to address? I think it was agreed across the board that what really came across from actually being, particularly at the module fair, was the face-to-face contact. That the chance for a module convener to sell their research. I think that's also one of the key elements, particularly from my view as someone employed by the college, is this idea that you're linking research and education, and students can see lecturers being engaged and excited about what they teach. Was it Paul Williams, I think? He came along with loads of books.
Like the comics and stuff, so, yeah.
He came across with a vast amount of books and literature that was associated with his module, and it was very much interesting to see how the students all flocked to that stand rather than the stand that was just the lecturer there with a piece of paper. And that really came across that it was something he was really keen and interested in, and he wanted to share that with the students, and I think they really valued that. And it's this idea of building an academic community, students being in one room discussing modules and discussing research areas with academics is really important, and that's something we need to keep and to enhance. And one of the things also is that we need to increase buy-in from academic staff to be involved in this, because it is a voluntary exercise, and this was the first year, and I think it was a bit ropey. There was one research module area that wasn't represented, I think, for the first hour of the fair. Just no one came there, and it's like, will that module suffer as a result? I think in the future, if this continues, it probably will. And then there's simple things that we can do, like making sign-up sheets for lecturers to hand out in classes. Just something simple, paper-based, but something that will get students involved and will get names on our list so that we can engage in contact with them. So just in case you ever wanted to know what a sign-up sheet could look like, there's indeed a nice picture. And then the final thing as well is, can this be rolled out to other disciplines within the college? One of the things that excited me from the beginning was the fact that this happened in English, which is one of our larger disciplines. Usually with change agents projects, they can quite often happen in smaller disciplines, and they can be very successful. And there's always the worry that the reason it's successful is because they're already engaged and are already a small kind of close-knit community. Whereas to trial something like this in a bigger discipline shows that these projects really can work
I think equally
with larger cohorts of students.
It's really just important to highlight that I think where maybe it might look less successful, things like the yearly poll, for example, might not be engaged with as much as they would be in smaller projects. But I think that is partially because of it being such a big discipline, and that where any sort of failures or issues we have in this, I think they might take more time to get over. But I think that's part of being, and not to be sort of disheartened or disencouraged with projects maybe that are involved within.
Yeah. So does anyone have any questions, if there's time?